There's a moment in every life when the masks we wear begin to feel too heavy, when the roles we play start to feel like costumes that no longer fit. Perhaps it's in the quiet hours before dawn, or in the space between heartbeats, when something deeper stirs within us, a gentle voice whispering that there's more to this existence than the endless chase for what we think will complete us. This isn't about abandoning the world or retreating into caves of solitude. It's about discovering that the peace we've been seeking in lovers, achievements, and possessions has been resting quietly within us all along, waiting for us to simply stop running long enough to notice. The journey home to ourselves doesn't require a passport or a map. It requires the courage to be still, to be present, and to remember who we were before the world told us who we should become. What if the very thing you've been searching for has been looking for you just as earnestly? Close your eyes for a moment, not to escape this world, but to truly arrive in it. Feel the weight of your body wherever you're sitting or standing. Notice how your breath moves in and out without any effort from you. This simple act of breathing has been happening since the moment you were born. Yet how often do we truly witness it? How often do we pause to marvel at this constant gift of life flowing through us? Between each inhale and exhale, there exists a sacred pause, a moment of perfect stillness where thoughts haven't yet formed and the mind hasn't yet labeled or judged. In this pause, something profound lives. It's not empty space. It's pregnant with possibility, with presence, with the very essence of what you are before you become what you think you are. This pause is where the real meditation begins, not in the achievement of some special state, but in the recognition of what has always been here. Your thoughts will me and go like clouds across the sky of your awareness. Some thoughts will be gentle and pleasant like soft white clouds on a summer day. Others will be dark and stormy, carrying the weight of old hurts and future fears. But you, the real you, are not these thoughts. You are the sky itself, vast and unchanging, providing space for all weather to pass through. When you rest in this understanding, even the most turbulent thoughts lose their power to disturb your essential peace. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. It will tell you stories about who you are, what you need, what you lack, what you must do to be happy. But these stories are just that, stories. They're not the truth of your being. The truth is found in the spaces between the stories, in the awareness that watches the storyteller, in the consciousness that remains constant whether the mind is creating tales of triumph or tragedy. In this sacred pause, you discover that you don't need to fix yourself, improve yourself, or become someone different. You simply need to be. Not being in the sense of doing being, but being in the sense of allowing what is already perfect within you to shine through. This isn't a philosophy or a concept to understand intellectually. Every moment of awareness, every instant of presence, every breath taken consciously is a moment of enlightenment. You don't need to sustain these moments forever or turn them into permanent states. You just need to notice them when they arise, honor them when they're present, and trust that they'll arise again. The journey of awakening isn't about reaching some final destination where all questions are answered and all problems are solved. It's about learning to be at home in the mystery, comfortable with not knowing, peaceful with uncertainty. It's about discovering that you don't need to understand everything to be at peace with everything. It's about recognizing that the love you are is vast enough to embrace all of your human experience, the beautiful and the difficult, the clear and the confused, the joyful and the sorrowful. So here we are together in this moment, sharing in the recognition that we are not separate beings trying to connect across the void of isolation. We are one consciousness, one love, one peace, temporarily experiencing itself through the beautiful diversity of individual perspectives. The wave is recognizing itself as ocean. The ray is remembering itself as sun. The breath is returning to its source in the eternal silence. Just be. Not because being is easy or comfortable or always pleasant, but because being is what you are. Just be. Not because you've figured everything out or resolved all your contradictions, but because this moment is asking nothing more of you than your presence. Just be. Not because the future is certain or the past is resolved, but because right now, right here, in this eternal instant, you are exactly where you need to be, exactly who you need to be, exactly as you need to be. The search is over. You are home. You have always been home. Welcome to the present moment. Welcome to yourself. Welcome to the love that you are. It's a direct experience of your own nature when you stop trying to be something and simply allow yourself to exist as you are. The great spiritual search that brings so many to meditation, to books, to teachers, to retreats, begins with a fundamental misunderstanding. We believe we are seekers looking for something we don't have, something we must find, acquire, or achieve. We approach spirituality like we approach everything else in our lives, as a project to complete, a goal to reach, a destination to arrive at. But what if the very act of seeking is what keeps us from finding? What if the seeker and the sought are not two separate things, but one seamless reality? When you were a child, before you learned to doubt yourself, before you learned to measure your worth against others, before you learned to postpone your happiness until certain conditions were met, you lived in a state of natural being. You didn't seek enlightenment because you were enlightenment. You didn't search for peace because you were peace. You didn't try to find love because you were love itself, expressing through the unique form of your being. This isn't nostalgia for childhood innocence. It's recognition that what you were then, you still are now, beneath all the layers of conditioning and belief. The seeker you think you are is actually the sought you've always been, playing an elaborate game of hide and seek with itself. The treasure you're looking for isn't buried in some distant land or hidden in some future moment. It's buried right here, right now, under the assumption that you're someone who needs to find it. The moment you stop seeking is the moment you realize you were never lost. The moment you stop trying to become enlightened is the moment you remember you were never unenlightened. The moment you stop running toward happiness is the moment you discover you were never separate from it. This isn't a philosophical insight, but a lived reality that dawns when you have the courage to simply be what you are without apology or improvement. The great teachers throughout history have pointed to this same truth in different ways. They've used different words, different metaphors, different practices, but they're all pointing to the same moon, the recognition that what you seek is what you are. The wave doesn't need to search for the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself as a wave. The sunbeam doesn't need to find the sun. It is the sun manifesting as light. And you don't need to find God, consciousness, or enlightenment. You are that eternal reality experiencing itself through the beautiful, temporary form of your human life. There's a profound spiritual practice that doesn't require sitting in special positions or chanting sacred words. It's the practice of letting go, not of life itself, but of the false ideas about life that keep us imprisoned in cycles of suffering and dissatisfaction. This isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about releasing the tight grip we have on who we think we must be, what we think we must achieve, and how we think life should unfold. Most of us approach death as something that happens at the end of life, but there's a kind of death that must happen many times throughout our lives if we're to truly live. It's the death of the false self, the collection of roles, identities, and ego-driven desires that we've mistaken for our true nature. Each time we let go of one of these false identities, we die to what we were and are reborn into what we actually are. This dying before dying isn't morbid or depressing. It's the most liberating thing you can do. When you die to the need to be special, you discover your natural specialness. When you die to the need to be loved, you discover you are love itself. When you die to the need to be successful, you discover you already are success, not in the world's terms, but in existence's terms. You succeeded the moment you drew your first breath, and you continue to succeed with each moment you remain present to life as it is. The attachments we cling to aren't just material things, though they certainly include our possessions, our money, our status symbols. The deeper attachments are to our self-image, our story about who we are and who we're not, our beliefs about what we need to be happy, our insistence that life should be different than it is. These attachments are like chains that bind us to a small, limited version of ourselves, preventing us from experiencing the vastness of our true nature. But here's what's beautiful about this process. You don't have to violently tear away these attachments. You simply have to see them clearly, to recognize them for what they are. Temporary constructions of the mind that have no ultimate reality. When you see them clearly, they begin to loosen their grip naturally, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn. The tree doesn't struggle to hold on to its leaves, and it doesn't struggle to let them go. It simply allows the natural process of change to unfold. This is the gentle art of dying before you die, learning to let go with the same grace that nature demonstrates in its endless cycles of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Each moment offers an opportunity to practice this letting go, to release your grip on how you think things should be and open to how they actually are. In this opening, in this surrender, you discover that what you thought was death is actually the gateway to life itself. There's a teaching that runs deeper than words, more profound than concepts, more transformative than any philosophy. It doesn't come from books or teachers or sacred texts, though it might speak through all of these. It comes from the heart's own intelligence, from love's own wisdom, from the recognition that love isn't something we have or give or receive. It's something we are. Love isn't an emotion that comes and goes with circumstances. It's the very fabric of existence itself, the force that holds the stars in their courses and the breath in your lungs. When we speak of love as teacher, we're not talking about romantic love, though that can certainly be one of its classrooms. We're not talking about the love that depends on conditions being met, behavior being modified, or expectations being fulfilled. We're talking about the love that exists before reasons, beyond requirements, and after all conditions have been stripped away. This is the love that sees through the masks we wear to the radiance beneath. The love that recognizes itself in every face it encounters. The love that knows no strangers because it knows no separation. This love doesn't ask you to be perfect before it embraces you. It doesn't wait for you to heal all your wounds or resolve all your contradictions. It sees you exactly as you are, with all your fears and failures, all your beauty and brokenness, and says, yes, this too is sacred. This too is divine. This too is worthy of love. When you begin to see yourself through love's eyes instead of judgment's eyes, everything changes. The harsh inner critic that has been your constant companion begins to soften. The desperate need to prove your worthiness begins to dissolve. The exhausting project of trying to be someone else finally comes to rest. Love teaches through direct experience, not through theories. It shows you that when you love someone unconditionally, you're not actually loving them, you're being love itself. The barriers between lover and beloved, between self and other, begin to dissolve. You discover that love isn't something flowing from you to them, it's something flowing through you both from the same infinite source. This isn't a loss of individuality, but a recognition that individuality and unity are not opposites. They're different expressions of the same cosmic dance. The deepest teaching of love comes when it asks you to love what seems unlovable, to find compassion for what triggers your judgment, to embrace what your mind insists should be rejected. This isn't about condoning harmful behavior or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It's about recognizing that beneath even the most difficult personalities, the most challenging circumstances, and the most painful experiences, there's something sacred seeking to emerge. Love sees through the distortion to the essence, through the confusion to the clarity, through the fear to the heart that beats beneath it all. Your pain isn't a mistake. Your suffering isn't a sign that you're doing life wrong or that you're spiritually inadequate. Your wounds aren't evidence of your failure to transcend human limitations. They're your credentials, your qualifications, your training ground for becoming a healer. Not the kind of healer who fixes other people's problems or pretends to have all the answers, but the kind of healer who can sit with suffering without needing to escape it, who can witness pain without being overwhelmed by it, who can offer presence without trying to change anything. The wounded healer understands that healing doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means the presence of love in the midst of pain. It means learning to hold your own tender places with such compassion that they become sources of wisdom rather than sources of shame. Every time you've been broken open by life, every time you've felt the ground disappear beneath your feet, every time you found yourself in the dark night of the soul, you've been initiated into deeper levels of compassion. You've been taught by direct experience what it means to be human, to be vulnerable, to need grace. The path of the wounded healer isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about embracing it so fully that it becomes a bridge to others who are struggling. Your scars become maps for those who are lost. Your tears become healing water for those who are dry. Your journey through darkness becomes a light for those who can't find their way. You don't heal others by having figured everything out. You heal others by being willing to remain open to the mystery of suffering and love. This path requires tremendous courage because it asks you to stop hiding your wounds, to stop pretending you're stronger than you are, to stop maintaining the illusion that you have it all together. It asks you to be authentic about your struggles, honest about your fears, and vulnerable about your need for grace. In a world that often rewards perfection and punishes vulnerability, this is a radical act of service. But here's what's beautiful about this path. The very qualities that our culture might see as weaknesses, your sensitivity, your empathy, your deep-feeling nature, these become your greatest strengths. Your ability to feel deeply isn't a liability, it's your superpower. Your tendency to be affected by others' pain isn't a flaw, it's your calling. Your struggles with life's difficulties aren't evidence of your inadequacy, they're evidence of your humanity, and your humanity is exactly what the world needs. The feeling of being separate, isolated, alone in a vast and indifferent universe, this might be the most pervasive illusion of our time. We walk through life surrounded by others who are having the same thoughts, feeling the same fears, longing for the same connection, yet we remain locked in the prison of our own consciousness, convinced that we're uniquely flawed, uniquely struggling, uniquely confused. This sense of separation isn't just an intellectual belief. It's a visceral experience that colors every interaction, every relationship, every moment of our lives. But what if this separation is not a reality but a perspective? What if the boundaries between self and other, between inside and outside, between me and you, are more like the boundaries between waves in the ocean, apparent but not ultimate, functional but not fundamental? The wave thinks it's separate from the ocean until it recognizes that it is the ocean, taking the temporary form of a wave. The leaf thinks it's separate from the tree until it recognizes that it is the tree, expressing itself as a leaf. This recognition doesn't come through thinking about it, it comes through direct experience. It might happen in a moment of deep communion with another person, when the boundaries between you dissolve and you recognize the same consciousness looking through both sets of eyes. It might happen in nature when you feel yourself merge with the landscape around you, no longer an observer, but part of the observed. It might happen in meditation, when the sense of being a separate self, sitting in meditation, gives way to the recognition that you are the meditation itself. When this recognition dawns, even briefly, everything changes. The loneliness that has been your constant companion begins to lift. The fear that you're not enough, that you're missing something essential, that you're somehow defective or inadequate begins to dissolve. The desperate need to prove yourself, to make yourself worthy, to earn love and acceptance begins to seem unnecessary. You realize that you've never actually been separate from the love you've been seeking, the peace you've been chasing, the wholeness you've been trying to create. This isn't a belief system or a philosophy to adopt. It's a reality to be lived. It doesn't mean you stop being an individual with your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It means you recognize that your individuality is not separate from the whole, but is the whole expressing itself uniquely through your particular form. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're the ocean expressing itself as a drop. The boundaries remain functional. You still have your own body, your own mind, your own path, but they're no longer absolute. They're more like the boundaries between colors in a rainbow, distinct but not separate, individual but not isolated. The art of acceptance is perhaps the most radical practice we can engage in. It's radical because it goes against everything our culture teaches us about how to live. We're taught to resist what we don't like, to fight against what we don't want, to constantly work to change our circumstances, our relationships, our inner experience. We're taught that acceptance means giving up, becoming passive, or assigning ourselves to less than we deserve. But true acceptance is not passive, it's profoundly active. It's the active choice to stop fighting reality and start dancing with it. Acceptance doesn't mean liking everything that happens or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat or giving up your power to create positive change. It means recognizing the difference between what you can control and what you can't, between what you can change and what you must learn to dance with. It means understanding that your resistance to what is actually happening is often more painful than the situation itself. When you're in physical pain, you have two choices. You can tense up against the pain, creating additional suffering through resistance, or you can breathe into the pain, allowing it to be present without adding the extra layer of mental anguish. The pain might be the same, but your relationship to it transforms everything. When you're experiencing emotional pain, grief, fear, anger, disappointment, the same principle applies. You can fight against these feelings, telling yourself you shouldn't feel this way, that you should be stronger, that you should be over it by now. Or you can welcome these feelings as messengers, as teachers, as sacred visitors that have something to offer you. This welcoming doesn't mean drowning in difficult emotions or wallowing in pain. It means creating space for your full human experience, honoring all the colors in your emotional spectrum, recognizing that joy and sorrow, love and fear, hope and despair are all part of the rich tapestry of being alive. When you stop trying to edit your experience, when you stop trying to keep only the pleasant parts and eliminate the difficult ones, you discover a profound peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being a certain way. The alchemy of acceptance transforms everything it touches. Resistance hardens into understanding. Judgment softens into compassion. The need to control relaxes into trust. The fear of what might happen opens into curiosity about what is happening. This is not a mental process, but a whole being transformation that occurs when you stop fighting life and start collaborating with it, when you stop trying to be the author of your story and start being the conscious witness of the story that's already being written through you. There's a secret hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of our daily lives, waiting to be discovered in the most ordinary moments. It's the recognition that when you truly serve another being, you're not actually serving them. You're serving the same divine essence that lives within you both. Service isn't something you do to feel good about yourself or to earn spiritual points or to improve your karma. True service is the natural expression of love, recognizing itself everywhere it looks, the spontaneous response of a heart that has seen through the illusion of separation. This service doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic life changes. It doesn't mean you have to quit your job and move to India or dedicate your life to feeding the hungry, though it might lead you in those directions. It means bringing the quality of sacred attention to whatever you're already doing, whoever you're already with, wherever you already are. It means seeing the checkout person at the grocery store as a divine being temporarily wearing the costume of a cashier. It means recognizing your difficult neighbor as consciousness itself, playing the challenging role of someone who triggers your patience and compassion. When you serve from this place of recognition, something miraculous happens. The boundaries between server and served begin to dissolve. You discover that in helping others, you're being helped. In healing others, you're being healed. In offering love to others, you're discovering love within yourself. This isn't a psychological trick or a spiritual concept. It's a direct experience of how interconnected we actually are. When you lift someone else up, you discover that you're not separate from them, so you too are lifted. When you ease someone else's suffering, you discover that their suffering and your suffering arise from the same source and dissolve in the same recognition. The most profound service often happens in the smallest moments. It's the quality of presence you bring to listening to a friend who's struggling. It's the patience you offer to a child who's having a difficult day. It's the compassion you extend to yourself when you're not living up to your own expectations. It's the willingness to be genuinely helpful without needing credit, recognition, or reward. This service becomes a form of prayer, a way of saying yes to life, a method of participating in the healing of the world. But here's what's beautiful about this path. You don't serve others in spite of your own needs and struggles. You serve others because of them. Your own experience of loneliness helps you recognize and respond to loneliness in others. Your own journey through fear gives you the capacity to hold space for others who are afraid. Your own struggles with self-acceptance allow you to offer unconditional love to those who are struggling with their own self-worth. Your wounds become the source of your wisdom. Your pain becomes the foundation of your compassion. Your healing becomes the gift you offer to the world. Nothing lasts forever, and that's both the most terrifying and the most liberating truth you can ever embrace. The people you love will die. The body you inhabit will age and eventually fail. The thoughts you think will dissolve back into the silence from which they arose. The emotions you feel will pass like weather through the sky of your being. The roles you play will eventually be played by someone else. The very sense of being a separate self will one day be seen as the beautiful dream it has always been. This isn't meant to be depressing or morbid, it's meant to be awakening. When you truly understand that everything is temporary, that everything is in constant flux, that nothing can be held on to permanently, a profound shift occurs in how you relate to life. You stop postponing joy until conditions improve. You stop withholding love until you feel safe. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to be present because you realize that this moment, imperfect as it might be, is the only moment you actually have. The wisdom of impermanence teaches you to hold everything lightly, not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply that you want to honor the temporary nature of all experience. You learn to love your friends and family, not despite the fact that your time together is limited, but because it's limited. You learn to appreciate your body not despite its aging, but because its aging reminds you to be grateful for each day it carries you through this world. You learn to treasure your thoughts and emotions not because they're permanent, but because they're the fleeting expressions of consciousness exploring itself through your unique perspective. This understanding doesn't make you detached or indifferent. It makes you more present, more grateful, more aware of the preciousness of each moment. When you know that the sunset you're watching will never happen again in exactly the same way, you pay attention differently. When you know that the conversation you're having with your friend might be one of the last, you listen more deeply. When you know that the breath you're taking right now is unrepeatable and irreplaceable, you breathe with more awareness. The cycles of birth and death aren't just happening at the beginning and end of life. They're happening in every moment. With each breath, you die to the previous moment and are born into the next. With each thought, old patterns of thinking dissolve and new possibilities emerge. With each choice, previous versions of yourself pass away and new versions are born. This constant process of dying and being reborn is not something to fear, but something to dance with, not something to resist, but something to surrender to. Here's the most beautiful part of this journey. You don't have to go anywhere to find what you're looking for. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love. You don't have to achieve some special state of consciousness to be enlightened. You don't have to wait for conditions to improve to be at peace. Everything you've been seeking is already here, already now, already you. The only thing that's ever been missing is your recognition of what has always been present. This moment, this ordinary, imperfect, exactly as it is moment, is the doorway to everything you've been searching for. Not because this moment is special or different from other moments, but because this moment is the only moment that actually exists. The past is a memory arising in the present. The future is a projection arising in the present. The only place where life actually happens is here, now, in this eternal present that is always arriving, always fresh, always new. When you truly arrive in this moment without trying to change it or improve it or escape from it, you discover that you've never actually been anywhere else. All your seeking, all your spiritual practices, all your efforts to become enlightened or awakened or liberated have been movements within this same eternal now. You've been like someone frantically searching for their glasses while wearing them, looking everywhere for what was never lost. The breath you're breathing right now is the breath of the divine. The awareness that's reading these words is the awareness of the cosmos itself. The love that beats your heart is the love that moves the stars. You are not separate from the sacred. You are the sacred, temporarily forgetting itself in order to experience the joy of remembering. You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, and both the humanity and the spirituality are equally divine. This coming home doesn't require you to be perfect or pure or permanently blissful. It requires you to be present. It requires you to be willing to be exactly where you are, exactly as you are, without apology or improvement. It requires you to recognize that your struggles and your successes, your fears and your joys, your questions and your certainties are all arising within the same vast consciousness that you are. The meditation you've been practicing your whole life, whether you called it meditation or not, is the practice of being present to what is,